Hi, hi.
Woo! How are you?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm very well, thank you. I
Good.
I want you to know that the conversation is recording, but I'll cut out this stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, this is just saying hi
Yeah.
and oh my goodness, I'm really excited to talk to you about your experience as an educator. Um Lakiba, I am so excited that you are looking forward to like workshop 2.0 or teaching
Right.
2.0. And so on the exit ticket today, this
Yeah.
compassion podcast,
Yes.
I would love to give you the opportunity to reflect on your experience as an educator in the time of pandemic teaching and learning.
Hmm.
So I wonder if you could even start like, going back, if you could even start with what you do, what kind of educator you are, and what your values are as an educator.
Okay. Wow, that's a good, broad question. Well, I'll say first, I am told that I started educating at a really young age. I was that kid that was very curious, loved to go to the library, was always reading. I think my mother told me before I could read, I would just stare at books and say, oh, I wish I could read. I wish I could read. And so from an early age, I was very curious, into books, like to learn, but not only like to learn, but like to teach. So I would go to the library, I would get books, I would read, and I would come back to school teaching things that I had read. So I really always kind of thought I was going to be a teacher or wanted to be a teacher, but I went to college. I went in a whole different direction. And for 20 years, I was in high tech corporate America, working a regular job in management. And it wasn't until I was doing training though, which was still teaching, but I got laid off and I was kind of lost for a while. And I saw this opportunity to be an adjunct professor teaching what I had been doing in corporate America. And so I applied and I got the job. And I remember I went for the interview. And when I was leaving, she said, see you later, Professor Pittman. And by the time I got to my car, I was crying like, oh my God, Professor Pittman. Like, how
And
did
why
that
did you
happen?
cry? Why did that what
It
was it
was
that brought you?
so, it was like a full circle. Like, yeah, as a child, I just dreamed of opening doors to children's minds and a little bit of taking us outside of ourselves, exposing us to adventure or stories, people. And it seemed like I wasn't going to be able to do that, meaning it felt like I just had to go get a regular job. And when she called me professor, somehow that was a loop, and it just hit me in my heart that, oh my gosh, I'm Professor Pittman. I'm gonna get a chance to actually change lives and plant seeds. And so I started teaching. And the reason I'm kind of telling this long story, so I started teaching in college, but because I also teach mindfulness and compassion, I also started teaching K through 8 and then high school. So while I've been teaching regular college classes, I've also been teaching kids mindfulness and compassion and how do we kind of social emotional learning skills. And I think that's when I was just over the moon, because the little ones, the kindergartners, I mean, I don't know, I can't even really explain it. My kindergartners, they understand compassion. They understand what it feels like to be an outsider or alone, like we would talk about. I would say, what would you do if you saw a kid on the playground kind of, or at lunchtime off to themselves? What would that mean? Or what would you do? And they'd say, well, maybe they felt lonely, or maybe they didn't have anyone to play with. I'd go up to them and I'd say, do you want to play? Right? So these heart-centered pedagogy is what I have. And I bring it in to whatever I'm teaching, whatever grade I'm teaching, from kindergarten to my college classes, which in my college classes, I begin with a mindful moment. What do I call it? Quiet time. I haven't been calling it mindfulness. Okay, we're going to have quiet time. Let's everybody, and we close our eyes and we begin. And I think that was the longest answer ever. But to your question, I think my pedagogy is heart-centered. It's really the, what would I say, the messages that are in stories that I really like. And anything from kindergarten to college that can help a kid connect with themselves, comfort themselves, be nice to other people. Loved Mr. Rogers. So I'm Mrs. Rogers, right? I'm trying to, I can so relate to him and what he was doing. And that's really the motivation, is to kind of be sensitive with kids, to check in and how are you doing, to, as I get up in grades like 4th, 5th, and this summer I had 4th to 8th, who I had a mindfulness class, and then I had 9th to 12th grade. And so they were able to kind of talk about their fears, when they get anxious. Yeah, so I don't teach math or science per se, you know what I mean? My desire, I guess, is more how to be in your own life and how to be your own cheerleader. And I think it's based on my own growing up, you know, what I wanted, what I was attracted to. I remember my kindergarten teacher and my 3rd grade teacher. And I remember that feeling that I had when I was recognized, when they saw something in me. And I've never forgotten it.
Mm,
I've never forgotten that feeling of what it feels like to be seen.
mm,
And so I think I didn't consciously think I'm taking that. I didn't link it all up. Now, this is years now. I'm looking back and I can see threads and things that really meant something to
mm.
me. Yeah. So I don't know if I answered you.
Beautifully, and actually, you've offered some threads that I would like to pull on some more.
Okay.
You clearly teach from the heart, about the heart,
Mhm.
and you say you are teaching kindergarten through college, and by the way, medical professionals, etc.,
Right. That's true.
how
Yeah.
to be in their lives.
Yes.
So I want to know, Professor Pittman, how you are in your own life. How do you take care of your heart in doing all of this heart-centered work?
Well, it's a great question. I think in in college, I started meditating.
Mm,
And I would say, I had always gone to church. And so, not to knock just regular church, but I found that meditating was something that kind of hit me on multiple levels, meaning it was a physical way to just relax. Like if I got anxious about taking a test or something, I could do some breathing. I could imagine I'm at the beach so it helped me. I noticed it just helped me calm myself. And as I got kind of deeper into it, I would say not into the religion more, but into the practice more, I saw other benefits, meaning I was clearer, I guess, not so foggy in my thinking. Um, it had efficacy for me in my own life. And let me just knock on wood. And as a consequence, I'm, what it's like? It's like you're living a regular life that has some chaos in it. And one day you go to the river. And while you're sitting at the river, all of the week's angst just
mm,
evaporates, and you're just there in that peaceful
mm,
scene. And it started to be that for me, that it was a respite. It was a place that I could lay my burdens down, because I don't know a life that doesn't have some burdens,
mhm,
right? That doesn't have some downtime, doesn't have some pain. I mean, that's a part of life. And so I I think on multiple levels, on kind of a conscious level, a physical level, an emotional level, a spiritual level, all of those levels were hit through my meditation practice and I don't necessarily mean just sitting meditation, but it could be working in my garden, it could be going for a walk. I started to realize I can take this state that I get to in my meditation into other places. As a matter of fact, when I go to the lake, I feel like I'm in the meditation, right? You know what I mean? I started to feel that place outside of the meditation.
mm,
And so now it's like I wrote a book called, it's just a little booklet. I don't want to minimize it. I don't want to over maximize it, but it's a book of my poetry, art that I've drawn, and stories from my life. But it's called Breadcrumbs from the Soul, Finding Your Way Back Home. So in a way, the meditation were like breadcrumbs. And so when I get stressed out at work, or when I got depressed during this pandemic, when I got anxious, when I got traumatized, when I got wounded and then wounded again, when I got distressed, I had some breadcrumbs that could lead me back to at least a respite, because to some degree, you can't really just go stick your head in the sand, right? And the sky is falling out there. But for me, I'm thankful that I have integrated a way of life into my life, like an automatic, I can think of all kinds of metaphors, like a soft pillow, like mommy's lap. I mean, I can think of all kinds of things, but the bottom line is there is a place that I can go emotionally, spiritually, and I don't even have to make it sound like that. I can just go take a nap, right? It doesn't have to be woo-woo. It can just be basic. I can pet my dog, go get some flowers, go for a walk, work in my garden, or actually do a more formal meditation. And that is the thing that keeps me going, right? Keeps me going. And I would say during this pandemic, it was especially challenging because I think, I'm just like everybody else, but I'm empathic. I'm not only feeling my own whatevers, you pick up on other people too. And so I think during the pandemic, it was how I felt, then it's what's happening to my family, and then what's happening to my friends, what's happening in the city, and what's happening in the nation, what's happening in the world. Oh my God, what am I gonna do? That's big. And so one, being able to join other communities, like the whole compassion arena where you can meet and talk with other people, staying in contact with my family. I think my dog saved, I think I kept her, she's 14. And I bless her every day and say, I think she's here so long, she saved me through this pandemic, right? And so that's how I am surviving this. But I will say it's been a tough year. I think in my consciousness, one of the tougher years, other than things that have happened to me personally. Like I've had illnesses over my lifetime. You know what I mean? There have been deaths in my family. Of course, all of those things were very difficult, personal things. But this pandemic and its impact has been pretty tough. And my son and two of my grandkids did get the virus,
Mm.
and ended up okay. But yeah, I just feel a lot of stress
Yes,
around.
yes. And one of the things I am so curious about is the burden of the pandemic overlaid on the burden, the heartache of a surfacing of racial injustice.
Mhm, mhm,
And I'd love to know more about what it was like in either your teaching life or your personal life,
mhm,
or both,
mhm, mhm.
to be living in this moment, to be living and teaching in this moment of a pandemic and such racial pain.
Excellent question. Excellent question. Well, I first felt called to come to the forefront, I guess I would say. And uh, I didn't feel like running and hiding. I felt like, no, I've got to more, wherever I'm visible, I got to get more visible. And where I'm not visible, I've got to get visible. So I did kind of feel urging or a calling to come out. But at the same time, I was like, come out and what? Right? I was like, okay, wait a minute, you're calling me out there, but what do I do?
Mm.
Right? What do I do? Because it seemed big,
Mm.
So it was almost easier for my classes,
Mm.
meaning at the college where I teach, I was asked well, they actually added a class. They called it special projects or something, but they added a class called Race and Racism.
Mm.
It was a scurry because they were scurrying over, now I can't remember where we were. We ended in spring, and then, okay, in fall, they wanted to have this class. And fortunately, I was the lead teacher. I
Mm.
wasn't the only teacher. So what we did is we had speakers
Mm.
come in and talk about different parts. So there were speakers from other colleges that came in. So each week
Mm.
it was like a speaker and then me the next week, then a
Mm.
speaker. So I taught half of the classes and other people, which was a wonderful, wonderful idea. And I would suggest it to anybody, like, because it's so big of a issue,
Mm.
and nobody's really been carrying the weight of
Mm.
that issue, then don't try to just do it by
Mm.
yourself. Bring in people that have expertise in some of the areas. So for example, we had some English professors from my college who came in and taught 3 of the classes over the semester. And they did kind of like how racism was reflected in literature. So they had different authors, James
Mm.
Baldwin, they discussed Toni Morrison.
Mm.
So it wasn't like that I had to do everything, which
Mm.
helped, right? So we each took a piece of that pie,
Mm.
if you will. So we had them, and then we had people who are experts in political science, had a professor from Stanford, a professor from USF. They came and they did their thing. And then somebody on economics and surveys did their thing. Then somebody on criminology, they came and did their thing. So I think sometimes you may not know everything to do, and that's okay. Just have access to people that know a part of it, right? And so they were teaching the students and teaching me at the same time. And so I was paying attention. So each class I was able to kind of weave that in to an overall. So what are we seeing here? And what are we learning, right? So it was kind of a learning experience for everybody. So that's how we kind of handled it at the college level. And then for my young folks, my middle schoolers and my high school students, it was more open discussion, meaning like one of our lessons is on what would I call it? Celebrating difference. And so we would more have a conversation about what we call the outsider. Have you ever felt like the outsider? Right? And then everybody would kind of discuss, because we've all felt like the outsider at some point, right? So we would talk about that. So those with the younger kids, it was more, do you know what's happening? And what are you concerned about? What do you want? We named the different things. So there's the pandemic, working in communities with a lot of Latino students. So theirs was what's going on at the border and missing their families, because they always used to go to their cousins and they get to go to Mexico. So it was more asking a question and getting them to name maybe what they had a question about. So it was that way. And then for my high schoolers, it was more introducing a topic. Let's talk about like the isms of the day. So there's racism, sexism, ableism, ageism, kind of introducing it as a broader thing, and then zeroing in on any particular issue that they were aware of. I mean, it was, I had to like, I was kind of learning on the spot in a way, because that wasn't specifically my area. It was kind of related to my area.
Tell me more about that, meaning that teaching a race and racism class wasn't your area. Your area was SEL, heart-centered.
Yeah.
And so why were you called upon? Or was it that you said earlier, I felt called to step up?
Well, it was a combination thing. I would say my last job in corporate America, I worked at Hewlett Packard, and then they spun off a company called Agilent. So I was I was a program director for diversity and inclusion, right? So that had been my field, if you will, how to grow from a US-centric company to a global company meant that you had to be open to cultural differences. So I was already teaching leadership development in terms of culturally, how to be more culturally sensitive and culturally competent.
And culturally compassionate.
Yes, which I was bringing in personally, right? In that so it kind of had a business motive.
Mm.
It was like, if you want to grow as a company, you've got to stop offending people in these countries where you're trying to go do business, right? So how can you develop the skills and insight and stop being so US centric and try to consider that other cultures may do things in different ways. So I was already doing that as a job. And so, but my underlying motivation has always been the heart-centered work, meaning, you know, when I was at HP, you couldn't really, some of that kind of got poo-pooed. I had to relate it to the business. How can what I'm teaching in corporate America help the business to be more successful? That's what you do when you're in a business. You're not teaching people how to be kind just to be kind. You're teaching that in a nonprofit that serves other people, right? And so, but underneath it all, I always was coming from being heart-centered, caring about your employee, right? And I could kind of tie it to, if you care about your employee and you show your employee that you care and you listen, then they're going to want to do a good job. Then they're going to be more creative, more thoughtful. They're going to show up, and that's going to lead to more profit for your company. So that was kind of my logic there. By the time I got to teaching at college, I came in teaching diversity in the workplace. That was my class. Like, I'm teaching in a business school. So I'm teaching the efficacy of being diverse and inclusive, and how this is going to support your business success, right? Because a business doesn't have nonprofit goals, right? So that's part of what I teach, that diversity shows up different in different places. In a business, it's how can I create new markets and go to diverse people and connect with diverse people to get more diverse customers to buy my diversity of products and ultimately make more money so I satisfy my stockholders. That's why you want to be diverse and inclusive in a business. A nonprofit is diverse because they probably have diverse clientele. The Doctors Without Borders goes anywhere in the world. They go to the good guys and the bad guys, and they just go in and they help people live, right? So their diversity is, we serve everybody. We serve humankind. But that's a nonprofit, right? So this was my field. I just hadn't been on the political side of it, or I wasn't teaching race and racism. I was kind of on a different angle of it, if you will. So it was like a neighbor of mine. It wasn't far, but it wasn't my inroad. My inroad was these other things. And that's why I think it was good to bring in people who that had been their life. They only studied racism in criminal with the police. That was their expertise, right? They only studied political science. You know what I mean? So I was connected enough both intellectually and experientially,
Mm.
being a Black person, to know what was going on. But I wasn't at that point ready to just teach everything about it. But over, I mean, I got schooled as well. And also, I saw that, you know, in an educational institution, at least when you're teaching in college, I know in the younger grades, there's more where it's defined what you teach.
Mm.
And you have some leeway, but it's kind of set up kind of what you teach. In college, you might sign up to teach a class, but then you have the freedom to teach it pretty much like you want to teach it.
Mm.
And so as a teacher in college, I've always been able to bring in my authentic self,
Mm.
right? I've been able to express my personal
Mm.
view as well as stimulate thinking
Mm.
in my classes.
I'd love to double click on this idea of your authentic self.
Mhm, mhm,
As a teacher,
mhm,
what does it mean? Wow, like, what does it mean
mhm.
that Lakiba is trying to be her authentic self as a teacher in the pandemic, as a teacher
Yeah,
during the hideousness
yeah,
of border and racism and sizeism and
yeah,
sexism? Tell
yeah.
me.
You know what? I never would have thought it or anticipated it, but it has been big. I
Mm.
think bigger than, I mean, like, who knew, right? Well, I certainly didn't know that that living, how can I say this? That teaching from my authentic embodied place would be so needed and
Mm.
so transformative for my students and for myself.
Mm.
um I just have to knock on wood and just thank those years again. I go back to my you know, when you meditate, you and your compassion, you study compassion, you
Mm.
start to have compassion for yourself,
Mm.
right? You start to, when you start getting the imposter syndrome and wonder, who am I to be doing this? There's something deeper that says you're just the person to
Mm.
be doing this. And so um, I just knock on wood that I had years of being me before I kind of got called to what I would call this higher calling almost, right? So that I didn't have to practice being me. I didn't have, all I had to do was open the door and there me
Mm.
was. Right? I didn't, to be honest, I had been practicing it long enough. The only thing I kind of joke about today, but that's kind of true, is in a way, I had been in the closet with
Go
my
on.
own spirituality
Mm.
and with my own wisdom.
Mm.
Not that I was acting like I don't know, but a little bit. You know,
Mm.
in some settings, I might not use my wisdom
Mm.
in a certain setting,
Mm.
right? I would kind of hold back. And I think part of that is related to roles that traditionally there have been for women or people of color or a woman of color. I mean, I've been in lots of environments where I was at least one of the smartest people in the room, but not called on or not given a pathway to share my wisdom or speak my words into the setting. But I got really good at teaching because teaching became a way that I can say what I want to say, right? Uh, when I'm teaching, then I have a voice. And so I kind of started veering away a little bit from traditional management roles where you can only kind of go so far as a woman, you can kind of only go so far as a person of color, you can only go so far as a Black person. But I found teaching gave me a path to talk where I could be saying something. And so even in that, I would be very forthcoming in my classroom and with the administration and everything. I probably went to one staff meeting or so, you know what I mean? I was very open, myself, embodied, you know, very much connecting with my students, but staying out of the administration and all of that stuff that goes on that level. And I would say because of the times that we're in, I started being asked to step out of that closet and come into the fuller institution. And I started getting opportunities to, can you come do this? It started off, can you do a coffee talk or something at Stanford? It was a half hour, lunchtime, something. And people were, but I went as myself, right? Full out, if you will. And as a consequence of, I got like 5 or 6 other things after that. And then at my own school, they promoted me and want me, a lot happened, right? And so I'm still evaluating that, you know what I mean? I'm still in the midst of it, but I do feel that now is the time for all of the people who have some level of consciousness to come out of the closet. We need every one of us to help reshape these institutions and how people teach, respond to authenticity, that we allow people to show up as they are, from kids, especially kids, right? I mean, if there's any place, at least as a kid, you should be unencumbered. Right? If you have to be encumbered, let that come, I don't know, on some job somewhere, right? So yeah, I feel like I've been this person, but I mean, for my own protection, I've been it in settings where I felt safe. If I look back on it, I've always been very open with kids. And I've never been a traditional teacher in school. I've always been the guest, right? I go into classes. And so being the guest, here's Miss Pittman is coming in today, or they might call me Miss Lakiba, you know, they go, hi kids, I'm here today. So coming in like that, I feel unencumbered,
Mm,
right? I can just be myself. I'm there for the day. Or maybe I have an 8-week thing where I
yes.
come once a week, to a class and talk.
Mm,
So I feel very free in that and not judged. I mean, kids judge you a little bit, but I can deal with that. You know what I mean?
yes.
That I can just be me. And I
Mm,
think the blessing, knocking on wood, and everything I can do today
mm,
is that I more feel that it's the time is needing more people like me.
mm,
The times we are in is needing more people like me of all ethnic groups and all genders. And so they almost have to find people like me,
mm,
right, to kind of usher them along to this evolution that
mm,
we're in.
mm. I would love to reflect back to you, share some of the powerful seashells that I'm picking up from this
Please do,
conversation.
because yes, I would love to hear it.
I'm really inspired by this idea that the friction of the times
Mhm.
w- honed you, refined you, opened the door of the closet
Mhm.
so that what was in there was you, and that sharing was a marriage between like the teacher Lakiba and the soul Lakiba.
Yes.
And this difficult time of the pandemic and racial injustice has actually been the hard soil, like a Pinot Noir grape, upon which you've been able to now say, I am here, and there need to be more of me. Not just I am
Right.
here, but you're ending this by saying, come
Right.
on the bus, people.
Exactly.
So I'm
Exactly.
loving this idea that on the one hand, you, so how do you be in your own life? Then Lakiba says, what am I going to do about teaching racism? And
Right.
then it's back to, oh, I be in my own life.
Yes.
Oh, you.
Yes. Yes. Gave me goosebumps. Yes. Yes. And
And
who knew it was going to be that? Because that's not hard. Well, it has hard aspects sometimes when I doubt myself,
mm,
right? When maybe I'm triggered to
mm,
some experience I've had, some situation I've had where I have felt this get smaller kind of a feeling or invalidated kind of feeling. And as much as the human growth work that I've done, it doesn't really make that just go away because I think those invalidation moments happened in my life. And I think, while I was going through them, well, I knew they hurt in the moment. I didn't realize they'd hurt 30 years later, or you know what I mean, or
mm,
20 years later. I wasn't, well, who consciously thinks about that anyway? But I could tell when the whole racial strife got revved up again after George Floyd's murder. I could tell how much pain I was holding from my own personal um, things that had happened to me personally related to my race, but also the generational and historical things just came back,
Mm.
right? And
Did.
I wasn't able to not see them or not feel them. They kind of just, and I think it was the same way of seeing George Floyd, right? Kind of how shocking that was to everybody's system and our ear. We could see, we could hear, you know, it kind of got multiple aspects of our being, and it was so visceral and real that I couldn't ignore it.
Mm.
Over years, I had come to ignore my own pain, my own times when I was hurt, or I was called a name, or I was ignored. You know, I had, well, I thought I had gotten past those things. And certainly to some degree, I did, and I have. But seeing that, it just, I don't know. There was a lot of sadness
Mm.
for me personally. And also, I think I told you this before. I can't remember if I told you this before, but so I'm in our group, right, which is ACT. But when I was in CCT, they had a session that Jimpa did right after George Floyd. Were you aware of that? Or
More.
so right when it happened, a lot of compassion organizations that I have an affiliation with, a lot of mindfulness groups that I know about, they had to do something, right? They were also called to say something. And so they decided that Jimpa was gonna give a talk. And I remember wondering, well, what's he gonna say? Right? First, he's coming from kind of a different culture. He's also lives in Canada, so he's not a US citizen. He certainly knows some history about Black history. But anyway, I was very curious about how the Compassion Institute was going to provide this talk related to George Floyd's murder. And so there were a lot of people, everybody that had, there was like 300 people on the call. And I noticed that while I was listening, I started getting really angry. It was kind of my first gathering with other people, because before I was just home watching it on TV. And now I'm with a group of people who have also watched it. And it's my compassion compadres, right? But I noticed that in the midst of it, I started feeling a certain way that was kind of new for me. I was trying to figure out, okay, what kind of resistance am I being triggered? Like, I know how to figure out what it is, right? Because in the field of compassion, that's what you do. You become mindful, you notice that you're feeling some kind of stress, and then you start to try to figure out what it is. You offer yourself some comfort. Like, I knew the whole protocol. But in the end, I figured out what it was. And I got what came to me as kind of a metaphor, but truth is that I was angry. And I was angry with white people because not just white people, but that's what kind of came to me. Because I felt like Black people, what came to me was that Black people had been in an abusive relationship with white America, and that they knew all the time what was happening. It's like when somebody says, I was being molested, and and my mother knew it was going on, kind of thing. It felt to me that white America knew there were all these inconsistencies, abuses over time, and just didn't want to see it, didn't want to do anything about it. We'll deal with it in a few years. I mean, just wasn't responding to the emergent nature of it. And so that kind of boiled up as anger for me. But as soon as I named it, then the anger kind of dissipated. As soon as I was able to label what it was, it's like, oh, okay, I'm mad. I'm mad at all these 300 white people who are in my compassion group because you knew something wasn't right. You knew people weren't being treated 100% fairly, but you were just going on with your life. Now, so was I, but in that moment, so it's what, anyway, after I was able to name that and take a few breaths, then I kind of felt better. And I think that part of the ability for us to move forward as a nation or a world is naming these things, naming the harm, naming the hurt, naming the pain, getting some acknowledgement for it. Okay, now I can work with you to unravel this thing, or to, move out of that mindset, into a mindset that is more compassionate of others or people that are different than ourselves. So I do see a unique opportunity, I'll put it that way, for me. And actually being in this program is part of me figuring out what can I do, or how can I do more? How can I, why? Because it's not gonna help broadly for me just in my life to be angry at white people. What? Okay, how is that really helping? I've got to come out, right? And I've got to say, this hurt me, or this is hurting me, and it's hurting you too, right?
Lakiba, I hear you saying,
Yeah.
I want to do more. How do I do more? The answer is I be more myself.
Yes. And that's almost a full loop circle back to what Robert was saying, which is really what he was saying, that you're trying to create a little of this and this. It's really you. You are, hey, I'm my own project. No, I know I can't be that, but kind of.
For the work.
Yeah.
That is seated. Yes. Your soul generates breadcrumbs for others.
Yes. Wow. Yes. Ooh, that was a good one.
So,
Yeah.
Lakiba, my final question is, I have learned so much from you in this past hour of hearing you share courageously. I'd love to know how it feels for you to have had some time to reflect on how you have evolved in the past 20 months.
Wow. Quite an experience. Quite, I mean, I feel kind of emotional about it. I feel pleased with, some aspects of it. I feel like I can take a breath. I feel clearer. It's like it was an opportunity for me to sit and reflect.
Mm.
I mean, just by nature of you asking questions, I haven't really been thinking of all not consciously, I haven't been thinking of um, the answers to the questions that you've asked. So for me personally, this has really been really powerful and confirming, and I can hear it kind of saying, keep going, keep going, keep going, right? Don't stop. It's all good. And also you made me realize that it's not just a drop into today, that because of how you asked me the questions, I kind of can see a line of sight from when I always keep my little picture back here from this little girl right here had that first dream or desire to help people, and you made me remember that, right? Remember that it didn't just start 10 years ago when I started teaching, right? It started way, there's a lot, I can see a line of sight, which a little bit helps me to see forward, right? And that's why I said kind of keep going. And I know I can plan out some of it, but I'm kind of open to, where it takes me. And I know it is the thing. I think this is for everybody, but especially for me, it's just to stay me and to, I can, like if I'm a flower and you know how you can grow branches, I just be my flower, but I can grow, I can still grow branches, right? So it was a wonderful, I hope that I'm sure it's doing something similar for the other people you're interviewing, right? Because who really takes the time to think about our journey as teachers?
Thank you, Lakiba. I am so honored that you have embodied this line of sight such that I can see it, both the past vision and like just around the horizon where you're going.
Yes.
This is a really special sharing of reflection. I'm so proud to be putting it on my website, The Thinking Heart, which you are. And I'm just really grateful for this time. Thank you. Thank you. You've expanded my compassion.
Thank you so much. I can't wait to see what you do moving forward.
Thank you.
You are amazing.
Lakiba, this conversation is in my heart. It will be on the internet, but it's in my heart.
Okay. All right. right. Well, just keep me posted, okay?
Yes.
Just let me know.
I'll let you know. I'll send you the link to everything.
All right. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you, Lakiba. Mwah. Goodbye.
Bye.